Vinny Tortorich here. Hey man, if you're a fan of Izzy, you might be a fan of me too. I'm the guy that gets people to lose a lot of weight. I have something free for you guys. This is no clickbait. Just go to vinnytortorich.com and there's a big banner. It's a free PDF, how to lose weight. It's an intro guide to NSNG at vinnytortorich.com. Go check it out exclusively for anyone who listens to Izzy Presley. Thank you.
RockstarLeatherworks.com is your home for badass rock and roll gear. Featuring 100% handmade leather bands, watches, cuffs, bracelets, and more, Rockstar Leatherworks has something for everybody. Whether you are going to the show or you are in it, you can find something to fit your needs. Choose from a variety of designs or create your own masterpiece. Their bands and watches are second to none. They also ship internationally. Who needs a stage to be a rock star? Check out RockstarLeatherworks.com.
Hey ladies, Sass Pants Designs will take that band shirt that everyone has and make it your own in a flattering, sassy, and simple way. There are one-of-a-kind tank tops, halter tops, lace-up tees, and tube-top dresses already in stock. Check out the online store at sasspantsrocks.com and like Sass Pants Designs on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for special offers and custom orders. Use the code IZZY25 for 25% off of your entire order at sasspantsrocks.com. That's sasspantsrocks.com. Let Sass Pants make you the envy of the party.
Replay Guitar Exchange is your premier independent guitar store. Being independent is good. With all of the major brands, including new, vintage, and pre-owned, you can find the guitar, bass, amp, or accessory you are dreaming of. From vintage to the newest models, Replay Guitar Exchange can help you find that perfect piece. They have industry veteran expert staff, all players like you down to the owner. You aren't just getting a great guitar, you're getting the Replay difference. Find them online at replayguitar.com and find your dream guitar today.
Hi, this is Bobby Brown, and welcome to another fucking podcast.
My liver's all twisted up. But you know what I did? I loaded up with alcohol, more specifically vodka, whiskey, beer, tequila, more beer, more vodka, more whiskey, and more beer.
Who wants an orange whip? Orange whip? Orange whip? 3 orange whips.
So you're bored, are ya? I've come here to break your monotony. Let me have my piece, because I'm shooting with this one, folks. I don't care, man.
The unscripted, uncensored, loose cannon of commentary.
Why did you say that? Why? Why? You come out with stink like that? Poop. Your poop mouth. Poop out of your mouth.
See, son? Old legends never die. They just lose weight.
Like a legend and an out-of-work bum look a lot alike, Daddy.
I've got a midget friend, an albino friend, and another friend who thinks Lord of the Rings is real. Together we call ourselves the Unfuckables.
Quinton is in. Let the fun begin.
Party time.
God, you're an asshole, man.
I've never heard of Van Halen.
Hello, Hollywood. Hello, world. Hello, my loyal minions. It is good to see you, and it's always good to be seen. Izzy Presley here on another fucking podcast, Drunken Summit, KISS Solo Records Edition. This is going to be a blast. I have an esteemed panel of colleagues with me. Going to get to them in just 1 second. Make sure you guys do hit up all the social media at Real Izzy Presley all the way across the board, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And of course, the show page is another effing podcast. You want to donate to the show, it's very, very easy. IzzyPresley at yahoo.com is your PayPal. I also accept Venmo, Real Izzy Presley, CashApp, $ Izzy Presley, carrier pigeon, smoke signal, snail delivery. Whichever way you want to do it is fine with me. And also, we do have t-shirts available. Drunken Summit shirts, my what else do we got? I Love Van Hagar t-shirts, and of course these beautiful ACA tribute to Ace Frehley t-shirts are available as well. Let us get into the Michael Brandvold marketing Zoom line. If you need help with your next release, contact me at michaelbrandvold.com, and he will help you with the release strategy, playlisting, fan growth, press, radio, social media, and label services. Has worked with the great bands like Accept, KISS, Dream Theater, Leather Leon, Jason Becker, Puddle of Mud, and many, many more. And of course, one of our esteemed colleagues right here, the metal cowboy himself, Ron Keel. Welcome back to the show.
Reporting for duty, sir. Great to see everybody tonight. Great to be a part of this fantastic summit. And yes, Michael Brandvold,
has done amazing things for my business. I've always wanted to work with this guy, and he's been working with us on the new South by South Dakota project, and will be a part of everything I do from now on. It should have always been that way, but he's just an amazing guy with a great history, and he's like a personal trainer. He works me 6 hours a day, cracking the whip. And it makes me do a lot of shit that I do not want to do, but I do it because he says so, and it works. And we're fitter than ever, thanks to Mr. Brandwold. So
I love to hear
big
it.
Tip of the cowboy hat to that guy.
And also joining us from Hollywood, California, a man who you know from almost every single best of that they had on VH1. You know him from Queer as Folk. He's also a stand-up comic, and I think he has that Hollywood disease where he looks like he's in his early 30s, but it's probably really like 82 years old. Ladies and gentlemen, Hal Sparks. Welcome back to another fucking podcast.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And for the record, I do have a beautiful painting of myself aging in my attic. But yeah, I do look fantastic. It's a little rough for people to deal with, honestly.
It's great to have you back.
Downright rude. I get fitter every year. You know why I do it? And just to piss off people who go, man, once you hit 40, it's all downhill. That is the only reason I work out, is to irritate my stand-up friends. And so I can destroy half their act. That's it. That's the only reason.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I just accepted a job as a beanbag chair.
That you can stop at that word.
I accepted a job as a beanbag chair in a coffee shop in Sheboygan, so I'll be moving there very shortly. Welcome, first time to the show, Rayen Belchere from the band Early Rays has got this great cover of Cherry Pie Countryfied called Apple Pie. Welcome to the show.
What's up, Izzy? Thanks for having me. What's happening, everybody? Thanks for having me. It feels like, Izzy, it feels like an event almost, all the pub you put out on this thing. So I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Well, I got to do something for my 15 listeners, get them all excited.
Hey.
And returning to the show, the esteemed colleague from Rolling Stone magazine, and he's got a couple great baseball books, Big Hair, Plastic Grass, and what was the other one?
Stars and Strikes.
There you go. Dan Epstein, welcome back to the show.
What's up, everybody?
How we doing? So we are gathered here today to talk about what a lot of people, KISS fans and non-KISS fans, refer to as not the greatest KISS records that they are, even though they're not really KISS records, but they are. But we love them because we're KISS fans. And the solo records. And a lot of people think this is what started the divide, started the demise of the band. We're just going to talk about, should we just dive into the deep end and get to the Peter Criss record right away?
Save the best for last, right?
You're gonna play the hit up front, God.
Right.
Okay, Izzy, I'm sorry. I need to put some black duct tape over Hal's picture. He's just too good looking. I need to black him out on my screen.
It's brutal. Yeah.
I
don't know what it is.
I feel your pain, dude.
Yeah, man, totally. By the way, Ron, huge fan. End of story. We'll get to that later. But yeah, I'm curious what you guys think about this myself. But this was I was always told that it was a patchwork attempt by the band to keep it together. That Gene and Paul, to keep Peter from straying and doing stupid shit. They presented, we're all going to let's all do solo records. We'll all get our faces. We'll unify them. It'll be cool. We'll put out more product than any band in a 12-month period. And Gene and Paul will kind of still own part of the album later. That's like pretty much the genius part of it. But that it was an idea to keep them together when Peter was, quite frankly, talking out of his ass on such a high level. At that point, I mean, if you look at that CNN interview when he left, his exit interview, like you could see that they were just patching this ship with duct tape, trying to hold it together as long as they could.
Yeah. That's
okay. It's me. Yeah.
That's what I always understood, or at least as an adult would have understood.
Right.
At the time, when they came out, it was just like, oh, cool, all the KISS guys.
Full records. Totally.
But
and then it was a very Beatlesy kind of thing where like, who's your favorite member? What's your favorite track off your favorite member's thing? Do you like one track off of somebody? It's your second choice. It was super teenage. It was actually marketing brilliance.
Right. But I guess go ahead, Dan.
I have to say that, like, I knew, I would have been 12 years old when these records came out, and I knew something was off when my friend Ricky came to school and was telling me about, like, which songs on which albums his mother liked the best. So it was like,
okay.
This might not be the, like, badass KISS thing that I'm hoping for.
It was the 70s, so how milk was his mom? I mean, I think that's really the question we all need to know. Because my mom had a friend.
Mom, so I can't.
Yeah, see, I would have reserved judgment, my friend. I would like it because my mom had a friend named Marguerite who liked a couple of tracks off it, and there was a nurse that worked with my mom at the doctor's office she worked at who liked a couple of the songs as well. And that would have been I think I was what year? I was 9 when these came out, and I was already I was already on board, as it were, with both of those ladies.
Well, I guess what I was getting at as far as the they did it to like patchwork it together, but it seems like it also drove them farther apart, especially with the success of Ace's record.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that Peter's record sold considerably less than anyone else's, so that couldn't have
I would argue that drove him further away. But the weird part was that Ace gained more ground in the band and maybe even solidified his part, for another couple of years since he'd been phoning in solos on 2 records at that point.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, sir.
Ron,
for me, I think it was kind of a competition between the sober guys and the fucked up guys.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think the sober guys win, in my evaluation of these records.
Yep.
I've listened to them more the last 3 days than I did back in the day because I was 18 when they came out. And I was already on the road, living on the streets and doing the rock and roll thing. So I didn't even have the money to buy all 4 of these albums when they came out. I heard them through the years. And listening back the last few days, I realized what an influence they were on me. I didn't realize the internal tensions that KISS was going through. Kind of like a kid, when your mom and dad are about to get divorced, sometimes you don't even know.
Right.
And KISS was like mom and dad. It was like they were screwing other people. But it was okay because they were still together. I thought it was a brilliant marketing move. And now looking back and listening back to the records, it brought back a lot of thoughts and a lot of memories, but I don't really know the internal strife that they were going through. All I got was what I read in Circus Magazine.
Right.
Right. Also, I would like, can we start on the front part of it, is that the album covers themselves are some of the best artwork on an album I have ever seen. I remember seeing, especially the silver on Ace's face on the painting, and the lighting around each of them being a specific color of light coming through there. Like the quality of the artistry. That's why, it's one of the reasons why I love Love Gun and Destroyer so much. Mm-hmm. Those paintings are classics in and of themselves. Like if this came out and there was no band, somebody had just put out a picture like this, you'd go, what the hell is that? That's amazing. But the quality of the painting on, especially Aces, they look like photographs, and they aren't. I mean, they're, it's incredible. And I remember like looking at them, like the full-size albums when I was a kid, just mesmerized by specifically Ace and Paul's faces in these, and Gene's little trickle of blood.
Yeah, that always did it for me.
Just awesome, and so what was inside was almost like a gift beyond that, and they all had the matching posters that you could put together.
Yep. Yeah.
So incredible.
Let's face it, guys, the album covers were the best thing about all of that whole thing. Those album covers are so iconic. There's not a song on all 4 records to me that supersede how iconic those images are. To me, the solo records saved the longevity of that era for a little while. But to me, Paul's record, I'm not going to get into specific records, but as a whole, it felt like the least likely guy, Peter, had this #1 hit that went gold in 77 in January. And then in 78, these records come out. It's very obvious on all these records that all the members are trying to prove they can do it too. And they were chasing death on a lot of this stuff.
Right.
That's what that was to me.
Well,
they all had. Yeah.
I also think that it was their chance to write shit that wasn't specifically KISS music, and you know, just kind of go off and really, I mean, especially with Jeans, you really hear it is like how he just goes off the deep end, but I love it at the same time.
Right. I would argue that Jeans was the biggest departure from the entire thing, largely because his makeup was more confining than everybody else's. That being the demon was very, you know, God of Thunder was that's a track Paul wrote for him that ended up defining his character, and all the stuff he wrote had to kind of fit into a much more, Paul could be way more open about what he did. So could Peter and Ace. They could write hard tunes. They could write, do Strange Ways and also do, ballady sounding stuff, or I Want You. But Gene's makeup was such that all of his Beatles influence was impossible.
Right.
At that point. And his record is really, first of all, it should be called Starfucker because it's the one, right? Because it's the album with Cher's on it.
Rick Nielsen.
Who else? Rick Nielsen, Joe Perry, Donna Summer, right? Jeff Skunk Baxter, Ted Bundy, Michael Desbars. Who else?
The Toto. At least a couple of Toto guys are on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
Ron, so
I mean, there's a ton of that. That was a huge deal. That was very different. And I first of all, we should dive into some tracks too, because there are some songs that live with me to this day. That there's some songs that make you turn left instead of right at some point in your life. Everybody reaches a fork, and sometimes a song shows up right at that moment. And there's a big part of this, because I grew up in Peaksmill, Kentucky, one road, 46 people. I went to an elementary school, one-room schoolhouse for 5 grades. And then I started going into the city for middle school. And then I moved to Chicago and got rid of my accent and got a real job. But when I was growing up in Kentucky, there was no out ever. It was just a circular firing squad of childhood alcoholism. And so it was just what was around me. And I spent a lot of time listening to KISS, and they're why I'm not pumping gas. I mean, it's why I'm a fan to this day. But there are songs that came along on these that stuck with me. Move On was a big song that just suddenly came up when it came back to me when I was 14 years old, and I was deciding whether to move from Kentucky to Chicago to live with my dad versus my mom. And that song was sealed the deal. That's pivotal, and there's a bunch of songs on there, they always had that message, but that was always with me, So anyways, we'll dive into that. I don't want to jump the gun on it, but
that's all good. Ron, when you worked with Gene produced one or two Keel records, 2 of them. Did you ever pick his brain about it? About the solo records?
I wish I had. Listening back the last couple of days, I wish I had listened to it and done some homework at that time. But everything happened so quickly with Gene. I met him at the Beverly Hills Hotel. I played our song "The Right to Rock" for him, and literally he made the call right then and there. I'm producing this record. We're going to start Tuesday. And so all of a sudden, it was battle stations. And we had to prepare immediately for a recording session that we were in no way ready for. We had just come out of the studio with our first record, and we had no new songs except that one song, "The Right to Rock." But I thought, upon listening to it the last few days, how knowing Gene and having sat with him for months at a time in New York while we're recording outside the studio, driving around town, going out to shows, hanging at his apartment, and talking about music. And that's the one thing he passed on to me was his love and appreciation for rock and roll history, especially the Beatles and the Who and the bands that, like Hal said, he didn't get to express that side of himself within KISS.
Right.
So I really enjoy that aspect of his record. It's very theatrical. I think Peter's record, just being a vocalist, as a singer myself, I always loved the fact that KISS had 4 vocalists and all 4 guys sang lead vocals. I just thought that was really cool. Very few bands have ever pulled that off, the Beatles being one of the few exceptions. And I guess KISS is probably the hard rock Beatles as far as I'm concerned. But from a vocal standpoint, I think Peter's vocals on these 4 albums are actually vocally totally the best. I think he's the best singer out of the 4. Paul's the best songwriter, Ace is the best guitar player, and Gene's the showman. You put all four of those together and you have KISS. When you take all those elements out, you've only got certain ingredients of the soup. You don't have the soup. So that was what I was missing. I love Paul's record for the songs. Certainly listening back to it. Also, I realized where some of my faults came from in my early years, because I would duplicate that falsetto like he does that Tonight You Belong to Me. He does that first verse in this high falsetto.
In a dream. A long time ago.
I remember doing a song called Serenade on the Steeler album. On my first album, Steeler, in 1983. I sang this ballad with this ugly female-sounding falsetto, just like Paul. And everybody's going, "What the hell are you doing? It sounds terrible." No, that's what Paul would do. That's what Paul would do. So I did it. To this day, I can't listen to it. So I had to redo the song a few years back with a man voice. But that Paul record, I was surprised listening back to it, how much of an influence it had on me. And if I was to have done a solo album in the early 80s, it would have probably sounded a lot like Paul's record.
Well, I think Paul's record, I think Paul's record is really the blueprint for what turned into 80s KISS.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I would say here, like, that's my favorite record. I've always been a Paul fan. I've always had ultimate respect for him in holding it together. I think if you want to linchpin this band together on one human being, he's carrying most of it on his shoulders. Gene might mouth about it more often, and he definitely played a part. But Paul did the slog. He dragged this band through the 80s, putting as much good material out as he possibly could, corralling Gene's dumber influences into the fits like a glove zone when he was just kind of like rubber stamping distance. As much as I love those songs because they're fun, it's more for the kitsch of it. But like, there's a production element that's attempted on on Peter and Gene's that makes it lighter. And remember, this is 1979, so even the voice that Paul is using, you got to think like what was on the radio at the time. It was like Christopher Cross and the Bee Gees and like the Carpenters and all kinds of other shit, and that's the influence. Yeah, that's the influence. That's, we would influence based on 5 years after the fact, because what was on the radio then represents the lighter, higher voice. You would, if you went in the studio, you would try to make that version of it. But what was all over the radio was that, we fell in love, but what did we know? Like that's, there's a reason, it's an influence that lasts. But like, I would put the production on Love in Chains and Goodbye and Take Me Away Together as One up against almost any other production in the KISS repertoire, especially like Love in Chains and Goodbye, just because there's so much guitar in them. The mix is so robust and warm, but it's still heavy. It's got that pop sensibility that Paul always has, but it's fuller than anything else. Whereas Ace's bare bones is the cool part, like friggin' Ozone. It's just saws through stuff. Whereas Gene's is lighter and fluffier. It's what Paul did with that voice moment, Gene did with his entire mix, it would seem. You know what I mean? Like all those songs, Radioactive, Man of 10,000 Faces or whatever. Man of 1,000 Faces. That's what it is. Man of 1,000 faces, his whole Beatles thing.
Well, Gene was actually singing. It was like, it was more, oh yeah. I mean, he did a little of that, but he really showed off that he could actually sing.
Well, let me interject
Please.
for a second, fellas.
Yeah.
Ron, let me get my fanboy out and say you're a legend, dude, and it's an honor to be on this podcast with you. I was a big fan of your band.
Agreed.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody's ever not told you this. I'm sure they have, but whoever wrote the movie Rockstar owes you co-write credit. So they just rewrote your first two records for that whole entire soundtrack. And I love that soundtrack. But when I listen to your records, they sound like your first two records to me at the whole time when they came out. But you're a legend, dude. Thanks for being on. It's an honor. I had notes as well, Ron. I'm a singer, and I too said that Peter's voice was probably tonally, in my opinion, just pleasant, was the most pleasant to listen to, except for like Hooked on Rock and Roll. I don't know if they were just running out of time, but half of it's in tune and half of it's not. And you know, there's a couple of those moments in there. I think that his song, let's see, I'm Gonna Love You, to me, Tom Kiefer had to have been listening to that when he wrote Shelter Me for Cinderella. It had that kind of honky tonk woman swing with the piano, with the trumpet, with all that stuff. I thought Peter, when he would sing in his higher register, kind of like Hard Luck Woman and that kind of thing, nailed it. But then he was chasing Beth a lot, and it would lose me. But there was a couple of those honky tonk, kind of like honky tonk woman kind of songs that, let's see.
Well, I think that was him trying to recreate Hard Luck Woman as well. So not, you know, everybody talks about how much they were chasing Beth as a, you know, as a band, with each one of them coming up with something, with the exception of Ace, you know, and I think you could argue Fractured Mirror is the closest thing. Like, I'll just do an instrumental that's as soft as Beth in some ways, but right. But you know, Gene literally doing When You Wish Upon a Star and Hold Me, Touch Me for Paul, like they were all doing that. But I think almost all of Peter's record is chasing Hard Luck Woman.
Yeah,
it's like maybe I just gussy it up a little bit, and that was a Paul song. Paul wrote that, you know, so
because he wrote it for Rod Stewart.
Right. He wrote it to be like Rod Stewart. Again, that's the momentary influence. You have to understand, like Maggie May, whatever, was on the radio at that time. And he's like, we could do that. You know, Paul was constantly going, I could do that. And he would, you know, he did it. Like every single time Paul's like, I could write a song like that. He does. And they stand up, you know.
I think, and I'm going to say this, I think Peter's solo record is the most underrated record that KISS put out. I'm not saying this most underrated KISS record, because it's really not a KISS record. And if you go, and this is what I always say about it, if you listen to that record with the mentality of I'm going to hear a KISS record, you're going to say, oh, it sucks, it's dumb, this is fucking terrible. But if you listen to it and try to get into that headset, well, okay, this isn't actually a KISS record, it's just a good record. You know, that kind of fit with the time.
What's good about it? What's good about it?
I like the songs. I like the feel. I like the vibe. I mean, because it's cool. It's not a KISS record. It's a 70s pop record.
Well,
I like it.
I just don't hear any songs. I mean, I got to hear a voice and I got to hear songs.
Right.
And Peter, like I said, in my opinion, his vocals are the best of all four on these solo records. But I don't hear one song on there. Hooked on Rock and Roll is my favorite track off that record. And so much of this is sequencing. When we're making an album, so important. That first song could be the only song the audience hears. They might listen to that first track, and especially these days, maybe not so much. When you bought the album in the 70s, you were bound to listen to the whole damn thing. But that first track has got to establish your identity somewhat. And I know Peter was trying to do a very un-KISS album. That's obvious. But the songs to me just don't stand up. Hooked on Rock and Roll does, and I would have made that track one right out of the gates, and I think people might have accepted the rest of it a little better if they had been indoctrinated from the top with Hooked on Rock and Roll.
Right. Didn't Sean Delaney, he co-wrote songs on a couple of the records. I don't know that he worked with Ace.
He wrote Rock Me Baby on Peter's.
Right. But he also wrote on Gene's, right? Because I think the whole thing was like, it was like he was either working with Gene as a co-writer or with Gene all the time, and basically was turning in a shit record, and they sent Sean over to give him some songs. These might have been cast-offs.
Living in Sin. Living in Sin is the only one he has credit on.
On Gene's record?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well,
so he'd also work with them on regular records too. He'd co-written some other stuff.
With them. Part of the KISS songwriting family. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so they basically like sent him over to help fix Peter's record. And I think a lot of it was just, remember these? We had these sitting around and the band kind of vetoed them because they were a little under, performing in the demo process or whatever.
Right.
That's what that album feels like. It's like, okay, yeah, let's throw that together. And everybody else, it seemed like it was Peter's idea, but everybody else had planned more for it. You know what I mean? Like it was he was the last person. It occurred to Peter they were making solo records when everybody else was like, Peter's going to leave if we don't make solo records. And they'd already gotten work on it. And then he rushed his in a weekend while everybody else had been working on it for months behind the scenes.
One thing about a solo album, one thing about a solo album, it should be all of the pent-up stuff that you've been building up that you can't channel through your band. A perfect example for me is Richie Sambora's Stranger in This Town, which is, to me, one of the best solo albums of all time. You can tell Richie been working on that record all his life. And I feel the same way about Gene's record. This was stuff that Gene needed to get out. Paul as well. This was Paul's chance to shine as a solo artist. And Paul had another great solo album. I don't know if we're going to talk about that one.
Live to Win?
Yeah, Live to Win. God, what a great record that was. And Ace as well. This is Ace's chance to show off his character and his style and his ability. I think Ace has some fantastic moments on that record. But I think Jeanette Fraley should probably have written more songs on Peter Criss's album. Because I see Jeanette Fraley gets credit on Speeding Back to My Baby.
Yep.
And that was a good song until I read the credits. It's the kiss of death when you cannot put your wife's name as a co-writer on the tune.
Right.
I have a song on my new
especially
album.
when it's about going back to her. Like it's supposed to be on the road and it's going back to his own wife.
You will never see my wife's name on a songwriting credit. I have a song on the last album, Fight Like a Band, and I had this lyric. It's about two kids meeting and they fall in love and they're heading west into the dawn. And she says, the sun rises in the east. You can't head west into the dawn. I go, oh, well, headed west into the storm. Sorry, babe, you're not getting any credit for that.
That's just geography. That's not songwriting.
Exactly.
I will say, like, for me, the Ace stuff, I mean, Rip It Out gets a lot of attention, and that goes, I think, to sequencing like you're talking about, Ron, because it's such a good song and it's right out of the gate. It's like old construction. For me, like, the stood out and I listened to the most were Ozone, No Blind, I'm in Love, and Wiped Out was always this weird little song that I just didn't get. Like, it was, I loved it because it was weird, but not because I got it. You know what I mean? And I still don't know that I do.
Wiped Out, in my opinion, was the first, what was that Metallica record where they just pieced parts together? That's what that song sounded like. It sounded like 4 songs pieced together. So I'm a big, I dug that song for that fact.
Yeah. Well, Anton Fig played with Ace on his, on the Fraley's Comet stuff. Yeah. So they obviously built some sort of writing partnership back then. That was a weird demo of that situation. But it's also why I think Ace, more than any other songwriter, and this is one of the things I love about Ace's songs, for a guitar player releasing solo records, he allows more drum solos in his songs.
He does.
Breakout, Rock Soldiers, like there are all these songs where it's what was the other one in? Was it I'm in Need of Love or? But there's this like down, like he just leaves in drum solo sections. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've always loved that about him. That's probably the most inspiring aspect of Ace Frehley as a musician for me, is that when I'm writing songs, I'm like, yeah, let the drummer go nuts for a second. Like put a drum turnaround in that. It doesn't have to be a guitar lick. Let the drummer do that for you. It's wicked. And he does it multiple times. And it was obviously born out of the fact that he and Anton Fig write this weird fucking song.
Yeah, right. Right.
Like, it's just so odd.
I know. It's just weird timing too, but that's what makes it so fucking cool. First half of the show brought to you by Beater Amplification. That's 2easbeateramplification.com. You guys can see that beautiful beater head right behind me. 100 watts of testicular fortitude, 3 channels, pull 2 tubes. You got yourself a 50. They are actually building rack mountable stuff now too. With all these different tones going from Guns N' Roses to Ozzy to Stevie Ray to Van Halen to all this shit. Check them out, Beater Amplification, 2easbeateramplification.com, and hit them up on Facebook as well. And our good friends over at Mackie. You want to get into home recording, you want to get into podcasting, hit up our good friends at Mackie. That's Mackie. They have these great studio bundles. I am running through their condenser mic right now. I'm running through the Big Knob Studio Plus, and I got my headphones, my Mackie headphones, and I love this stuff. Check them out. Very affordable way to get into it. Mackie, Mackie. Epstein, you're like the only person that's ever written for Rolling Stone that can openly admit that they like KISS. I want to get some thoughts out of you on this stuff.
All right. Well, okay. Well, first of all, back to Peter Criss and the whole like notion that if you just take it as an entity unto itself, that it's acceptable. The summer of 1987.
It's not going to go well.
In the summer of 1987, I'm working at a creative arts camp in the Adirondacks, teaching kids how to play guitar. And
community service, or did you? I mean, you couldn't just do a year like a real man.
It was just the summer. Then my slate was wiped clean.
I would have done the 10 nights in county and just called it a day.
Beautiful scenery, so it was all right. But I knew this guy who was the print shop counselor, who was like this 40-some-year-old Puerto Rican dude from the Bronx named Manny. And Manny had this like crate full of cassettes, and he was always jamming some of the print shop. And I was in there one day, I was just like, he was playing something. I was like, Manny, what the fuck is this shit? He's like, I don't know, man. It's a tape I found. This guy, Peter Criss, it's pretty cool, huh? And he pulls it out, and it was actually the Peter Criss solo KISS album cassette with like the KISS lettering on it. And so like he had no idea who he was and just like thought it was awesome. Whereas I had no idea out of context like that. And I thought it was shit. And at your behest, I went back and listened to it.
Did I call it or what? Like I could tell by the tone of your voice. Like right out of I was working in a camp and I'm like, this is going to be bad. This is not a good review for Peter's album. Like right out of the camp.
But
by the way, yeah, go ahead.
The other three I have affection for to varying degrees. I mean, to me, the Ace record is far and away the best. Like that whole thing is gold to me. Paul is great because I love Paul, and it's pure Paul with a little bit of raspberries mixed in, and just great songs, great performances. But it does get a little samey, which is the thing that kind of makes it a little less impressive as because with the Ace we weren't expecting that. We weren't expecting him to like be able to whip out a whole album full of like
expecting 9 copies of Cold Gin.
Yeah, exactly. And Fractured Mirror, even like that's a really cool instrumental. That's like
it's amazing
kind of shit that I would hear late at night on FM radio, and just be able to, just trip out to like, man, that's And
the fact that he's tied it together on all of his other subsequent records into this long form piece.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's like that in and of itself is trippy and so very Rush in its own way,
Right. Totally conceptual. And then like there's so much like, substance abuse themes running through this record, which
Ozone, Snowblind.
Right, it's just like he's the kind of guy who likes getting high, I'm down.
Like he was the 70s Sebastian Bach, except he didn't say, dude, there was Jack Daniels and cocaine.
Dude, dude, this is so fucking boring.
Dude, let me take.
That's a direct quote from Sebastian.
What were you saying, Rayen?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I said, I feel like I should be the guy to take this into a wild direction. First, I think the solo albums were an attempt for each member to kind of flex and show, I'm the guy. No, I'm the guy. I'm the guy. Well, really what happened is the genius in each record showed the genius of that band was really each guy being together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the 4 of them. And Ron, I'd like to address this question to you directly because I feel like you'd be great at answering. Did it not feel like that they, on all the records, they were like, all right, we got our 4 strong songs, just mail in 6 things and we'll put out a record?
Mm-hmm. Wow. I think it depends on the record and the era. There are some, we all have our favorites. Of course, those first 3 and then Alive are untouchable as far as I'm concerned. Those are in a class all of their own, and we all have our favorites. Personal Destroyer, Love Gun, and Rock and Roll Over for me. But I've even enjoyed a lot of the recent stuff. I've played it on doing my DJ gig. I've played Psycho Circus and a lot of those more recent records. Monster I thought was a great record as well. But
Revenge.
Exactly.
I mean, Revenge was
Overrated.
Shut the fuck up.
My point is that Ron, you know, as a guy that's put out a lot of records, sometimes the record label goes, we have enough good stuff, just wrap it up, throw 6 songs together. Because some of these songs don't feel thought out. They don't feel actually executed in a way that I think, looking back, they should have. Clearly, songs like Snowblind and, you know, some of that stuff is just locked in. And I think Ace, I'm going to take you into a weird direction. I think the Mirror tune at the end was a FU to Paul Stanley. If you think about his fractured mirror guitar, he'd been working on getting since '74 from Imaginary.
That's right.
I think, and him gloating about I like to get high, to me was a FU to those guys, because that was kind of that was the hard line in the sand. And I respect Ace for that. And I think Ace's record was the most honest. But here's my challenge to you guys. I want to take it into a crazy direction, because Izzy didn't have me on here just to sit back and nod my head. I think in the 70s at the Roxy on Sunset Boulevard, Rocky Horror Picture Show with Tim Curry was such a hit. Gene Simmons' record sounds like he tried to write show tunes, and at the end of it, it sounded like he was auditioning for Broadway with Once Upon a Star, and nobody liked it because he wasn't quite that good of a singer. Love Gene. Clearly, I'm a big fan, but I think Gene was really influenced by the Rocky Horror Picture Show on Sunset Boulevard. And if you listen, Ron, you know, in rock and roll, there's little tricks in the studio. I've written on some show tunes before. There's little tricks that I listen to now, and I'm like, that's a show tune trick. Why would he do that? And with the piano and the horn sections and the la-di-das and the shoebops and all that stuff. I think Gene was auditioning to be on Broadway, and I think it kind of backfired on him a little bit. That's just my opinion. So take it and tell me how crazy I am.
No, I think you're probably right. Gene was, one thing I loved about him and still do, is that he was not afraid to try anything. Exactly. And he taught me this lesson in the studio when we were making records for 2 years in the 80s. He was fearless. He would try anything. And if it didn't work, we would know it. And in his book and his business platform, he's told you, I mean, it's okay to fail. You know, you have to try. You have to make an attempt at that. And Gene wanted to be a producer and a publisher and an actor and all this stuff. And I respect and admire that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I enjoyed listening to Gene's solo album from a purely critical standpoint. You know, trying to evaluate the records and prepare for this conversation. Like I said, a lot of thoughts and feelings and memories came flooding back. But I wish I had listened to Gene's record more the week before we went in the studio together to work with him, because he was adamantly against me expressing myself or stretching out or being anything other than the demon. Basically, that Right to Rock album is, there's no acoustic guitars, there's no keyboards, there's no there's no female background singers. Let's put it that way. It's all straight ahead, solid, hard rock and metal. And I wish I could have used his solo album as an example. Say, look, Gene, you did it. It's cool. Can I just put an acoustic guitar on this?
Yeah, and he would have, and Ron, he would have said, you define yourself with 5 albums first, and then you can start branching out. Or that was one of the failures. Learn from my mistakes.
Exactly.
And although I doubt he would have actually voiced that.
I think he would have. I think he might have. We're pretty close, and he would sit around with me in the studio, and he would show me a KISS song. And then he'd show me the song he ripped off to write that KISS song.
Right, yeah. Stanley the Parrot.
Yeah.
Well, that's when you guys listen, when you go.
People try to put us down, or it was stand up, you don't have to be afraid. He would sit and show me. He would play me this. He would play me a KISS song, and he'd play me the song he stole it from. He says, "Ron, only steal from the best."
Right.
My challenge to you guys is next time you listen to that record, think of it. Say, do I hear any show tunes in this? And then get back.
Besides When You Wish Upon a Star, which was sung by a cartoon mouse.
Right. The whole record.
Right. Man of a Thousand Faces, I think, flies back to his Beatles roots and his attempt to be all about horror films, you know, and that idea. For me, the songs that stood out for that, I love Man of a Thousand Faces is like Naked City from Unmasked. It's one of those songs of his that it didn't seem like the hit at the time and didn't really fly off that, but it's the one I find myself singing out loud randomly those lyrics that come to man of 1,000 faces, that is the same zone as that in the naked city there are 10 million stories, that whole business that he did. And there's a lot more, you talk about how like Paul's album is very much the KISS record in a lot of people's minds. Right. But Gene's record has a lot more to do with how Unmasked turned out as far as mixing, what it ended up sounding like, guitar tone-wise.
Yeah.
There's a lot more continuity from Gene's record to that record than there is, because Paul's was way thicker. And there was a period where whoever was mixing the records was aiming towards, look, radio has to be thinner. Thinner mixes get better radio play. Like, that's why Crazy Nights had the guitar tone it did versus Asylum or Lick It Up, for that matter.
I listened to Unmasked this week on my radio show. We're celebrating the 40th anniversary of 1980. So I had to listen to all the records. There's some great albums released that year. And I can tell you right now, I just listened to Unmasked top to bottom, looking for something that was broadcast quality that I could play on the show, and I didn't find it. I think any one of these 4 KISS solo albums is better than Unmasked, personally.
I agree.
As far as mixing goes, I love I love that record on a bunch of fronts, but like I always loved Shandy. It was always a kickoff song for me. But Is That You is one of the best live songs that when my band, we only do oh shit covers. When people when you start playing it, people go, oh shit. Like they go who plays that? That's cool. Like it catches you off guard and it makes you feel good. And you're like, I love that song. Wait a minute. Nobody bothers with that one. They always play Rock and Roll All Night or something. Yeah. And Is That You had this kind of grit to it. It just didn't have the depth of production that Paul's solo record or even Ace's solo record had. It sounded like Gene's production. It sounded paper thin. The whole record does. And that's one of the issues with it. The songs don't get the oomph that they deserve because it isn't there. And there's a bunch of records like that. I mean, I feel that way about the Wasp Still Not Black Enough record. I fucking love that record, but it sounds like it was played through a kazoo.
Yeah, right. Well, let me ask you guys this. Bob Kulick played all the guitars on the Paul Stanley record.
And part of Love Gun and half of Rock and Roll Over.
Right. But do you think that's what KISS would have sounded like more if Bob would have got the gig instead of Ace?
No, because I think that was Gene and Paul trying to make those solos sound like Ace should have sounded. So whatever Bob would have brought naturally might not have.
No, I was talking about the Paul record.
From that.
I was talking about the Paul record.
Oh, okay. Again, I think he picked somebody, he liked Bob a lot. He trusted him and he was like, these are singable solos. I want them to sound kind of like this. Paul's a better player, I think, than most people give him credit for.
Oh, I agree.
Solo wise. So I think he would play bits of it and go, you train all these together, make it a little more AC so it fits our vibe. Let's keep this cohesive. I think cohesion was very important to him more than anybody else in any of these records.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Well, let's do this. Let's take a break. You guys have to throw a whiz. Go throw a whiz. I'll be back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds.
I've been peeing this whole time.
That's what you're drinking, right?
Good. No. I don't drink my own urine. People pay too much for it. I wouldn't. It's a premium. I sell it on the internet. It's
Of course.
Mostly Japanese businessmen, but they think it actually puts lead in their pencil. I don't know, and I don't care. It's just long as it sells.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hal Sparks, Ron Keel, Dan Epstein, Rayen Belchere. We'll be right back talking, and we'll get into our personal. If KISS would have put this out as a actual fucking record. An actual KISS record, we'll get into our records. What songs are on there? So, all right, it's another fucking podcast. We'll be right back. My name is Izzy Presley. Rockwood Saloon Authentic Apparel takes rock and roll fashion to a new level with their tees and tanks for men and women. They also make custom shirts, jackets, vests, pants, hoodies, beanies, and more. The Rockwood Graphics Department can design anything from your logo, t-shirt design, promo posters, band swag, and printed at great prices. From tour shirts and custom stage gear to killer threads for the street to the stage, Rockwood Saloon has it all. Rockwood Saloon, authentic rock and roll apparel for stage and street. World tour tested for quality, comfort, style, and durability. Check them out at www.rockwoodsaloon.com. That's rockwoodsaloon.com.
If you need to promote your band or business, or just want to stylize, personalize, or customize your ride, check out vid-decals.com. Want to create and customize your own stickers representing your band, or make your own bumper sticker? Vid Decals can do it. All stickers are printed on quality vinyl and can be placed on any flat surface. Stickers are an affordable way to promote your band or business. Go to vid-decals.com to get started. That's vid-decals.com. vid-decals.com.
Retro Arcade brings Minnesota and surrounding areas arcade games from the days gone by. All of those great games from pizza joints and arcades are available in cocktail units and custom machines. Dozens of favorites from your youth in one machine to complete your game room or man cave. Retro Arcade also sells and services your favorite pinball machines. Find them at facebook.com/80arcade. That's facebook.com/80arcade. Retro Arcade. Your youth is just one click away.
Hey, this is Paul Stanley. And this is Gene Simmons from KISS. And you're listening to Under the Covers with Izzy Presley. And it's time for another KISS cover. Is that right? Are we getting paid for this? We're not? Okay. Well, I'm not going to finish this plug until we do. Get some KISS stuff at kissonline.com. Don't say that, Paul. We're going to wait until the check clears.
And they're like, try and make this. And then everybody wanted to be a part of it.
And we are back. Second half of the show brought to you by A&P Laser Engraving. Folks, you need something special done. You need a new flask run, Keel. Hit up our good friends, A&P Laser. And these guys are so good they can even laser engrave a hot dog bun. And Ron, I'm telling you, I got to get you in touch with these guys. You can get your sidearm done. They're great. They are great. And also our good friend John Palumbo Design. You have a band, you have a website, you have a business, you need a website design, you need a logo. Hit up our good buddy John Palumbo, johnpalumbodesign.com. Before we get back into the conversation, let us hit up the chat room. Tall Bear saying fractured quantum on anomaly is good. Yes, it is. Peter's solo album is like Bill Ward's solo album. They won't sound like Kiss or Sabbath. Agreed. Harry Hummus.
Although Time Bombs, Bombers, that song on Bill Ward's solo record. Remember that single that Ozzy sang on?
No.
It's awesome, and it sounds more like modern Ozzy than it does Sabbath, but it's still, I love that song.
Harry Hummus laughs out loud at Starfucker, which was a
I'm not wrong. Look at the liner notes.
Wrong. Yeah, you forgot Bob Seger too. And
right,
checking in from Canada.
You can smell him on the record.
Right. Bruce says, nice. You got some Roddy Piper in the intro. Yes, I did. There you go. All right. Tall Bear also says, listen to all the soul albums just to get ready for this. Oh, good. I'm glad people did their homework. I like this.
That's right.
That's good. That's good. So is there anything else we need to touch on before you guys want to dive into what would have been the best KISS record out of these solo records?
You know, Izzy, I think would be a treat is if Ron told us a good Gene or Paul or Ace or anybody's story. He worked with the guys, so Ron, give us a good one. I know you got some, brother.
Well, a good. What do you call a good one? I mean, there's so many. I could write a book if I hadn't signed a non-disclosure agreement. But you know, he would come into the studio, and this just at the top of the head. There's a lot of them. She would come into the studio for a session, and we would meet, twice for pre-production, and he'd bring his book into the rehearsal. The book with all the pictures of all the chicks, all the Polaroids,
Yeah.
And he'd show us the books.
Whoa. They are confirmed.
And so it was kind of a tradition. And then we would meet in New York for the session, and by then he'd have a new book, and the next year. So then one day he comes in, and he says, I want to show you the book. And he whips it out, and it's baby pictures of his son, Nick. It's like, yeah, exactly. But so many great memories that, like I said, some of the cool stuff was just sitting around with guitars, talking about music, and him showing me some of those songs. Driving around Manhattan going, Ron, I own that building. There are 16 floors. There's 8 units per floor. I make X amount of dollars per unit how much money per month do I make from that building? And I'd have to do the math in my head real quick. But going up to his apartment, overlooking Central Park, and watching, Shannon would make popcorn, and we watch all of the old KISS movies, and Phantom of the Park. I don't know how many times I watched that with Gene.
Awesome.
But
Wow.
a lot of great times. And that picture that I was showing you before, this is a dream come true for a kid like me who went. My first concert ever was KISS, obviously,
Me too.
and to be able to work with them. And then we did this gig 4 years ago in 2015, and I got to sing. Paul did 4 songs with my band, and I got to sing the duet on Rock and Roll All Night, Party Every Day. I did the Gene part with him, and it was just an amazing memory, and a huge part of my life and my career. I don't know if you're looking for dirt. There was a lot of dirt,
No,
but
you can keep that.
so much of it for me was just to be a small thread in that family. That's why I'm here tonight with you guys, is because I'm just a very small thread in that huge tapestry that is KISS. Really proud of that experience, and they were always nothing but gracious and nice to me. Back to the solo records for a second, Gene had pushed that song "Burning Up with Fever," which is track 2 on his solo album. There's a Keel version of that. We actually cut that song.
What?
It did not end up on an album, but I do have. And at the time, I don't know if I remembered it or not, but I thought it was like Gene giving us a new song. Here, Ron, here's a song. And this is after he'd produced the Final Frontier album, and we'd gone on to work with Michael Wagner, but we stayed friends. And he said, "I've got a song for you. I think you should cut this." And I thought, Gene, to have Gene's name on the next record obviously would have been great, and it was a good song. We worked it up. It just didn't make the cut. Michael Wagner, I think, was producing the album, and I think he vetoed it.
Wow.
So I'll get this back. Once you take a really good look at the background, I'll get rid of it.
So when he pulls out the book, is he like, Ron, you have to remember, this was the 70s, so you're going to see a lot of Harry Bush.
No, this was the 80s. This was
they got the 80s books.
This was Fresh Bush.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Okay.
It was
I got it. I have
there was some
know.
scapage. There was some scaping going on.
Yeah, not much.
What is it like watching KISS Meets the Phantom with Gene? I mean, is he giving you commentary as you're talking?
Yes. It's like Mystery Science Theater 3000 with Gene. There's Gene and Shannon and me and a couple of guys in Keel, and we're all doing the Mystery Science Theater 3000. Yeah.
I don't know if you don't know this, Ron, but Ace isn't really black.
Remember his stunt guy, for those of you that don't know, his stuntman was black. Ace's stuntman, and so you can see clearly the necks don't match. It's very funny.
Wow, no, I had no idea.
I think he has got to be the most sought after KISS interview there is, and he's just never showed up. And nobody can find him.
Wow.
That stunt guy?
Yeah, I found his name online a couple shows ago when I had Ace's band on. But yeah, there's there's no social media.
He just disappeared?
Yeah, it's like nobody. I mean, he would be like the ultimate guest at one of the fucking conventions. The Black Ace.
That would go over huge.
I know.
Are you telling me that Hanna-Barbera didn't keep proper records in the 70s? Next thing you're going to tell me that all of King Syndicate's money was above board.
All right.
Who wants? Izzy, will Ron let you get a copy of that track to play?
Oh God, I want to hear that.
We all got to hear it.
Yeah, I would love to find it. I'm sure it's on a cassette in the garage somewhere.
Yeah,
there's if you look up, my band's called 01. We did a cover of "Shock Me," so that's our one claim to fame. And I did the solo. I played guitar and did the solo, recreated the solo. And a week before I was supposed to lay down the track, I broke my finger, which you can see has a screw in it. If you see the bump right here, it has 3 screws in it, one that goes straight through the knuckle. And I recreated the solo without using my ring finger.
Thank God it's a solo.
Did you tell them to put that screw in that way just for the gals?
Yeah, just so they could, because that's what a woman wants is when you're grazing her skin with your finger, a weird point coming through the skin that's touching her.
The secret weapon.
Yeah, it's like buying the dildo from. Yeah, it's like buying the dildo from Phantasm. Not a big seller.
Since we're talking about covers, I'd take a chance to pimp this. If you go to @Ace Tribute on Facebook and scroll down in the links, you can see our show that we did in the Monsters of Rock Cruise studios here a couple weeks ago. A lot of fun, and like I said, there's a reason that I have an Ace Frehley tribute band because I don't have to sing that well, so it's beautiful. That's why I love it. But it's fun. Chad Stewart from Faster Pussycat, Alex Kane from Life, Sex, and Death, Sam Bam Colton from Faster Pussycat, and who was playing bass? Gabe from
Welcome Back, Cotter.
Yes, Welcome Back.
Sorry,
Cotter.
no.
Yes.
Gabe Kaplan. Yeah, it was Gabe Kaplan, professional.
Yeah. Anyway, so go check that out.
Mr. Carter.
Mr. Carter. So I gave these guys an assignment to put together if KISS had recorded a record with these songs, what would be the record according to them? And in mine, I actually switched vocals on a song. So I have a different vocalist on one of the songs. So I don't know who wants to start.
I'll kick it off.
I'll go ahead.
Do it. When we were talking about the switching vocalists, I kind of took that to heart.
Yeah.
And because, again, I feel like the Ace one is the perfect record or the closest to perfect. So my concept was to kind of flesh that out with participation from the others and, a couple of songs from the others. So we start out with Rip It Out, but with Paul singing, because I can really hear Paul, getting into those lyrics. Speeding Back to My Baby with Peter singing, because I feel like that's a very Peter rock and roll lyric. You can totally hear that rasp behind those lyrics. Then we go to Snowblind with Ace, because you're not going to top that vocal for personality. Then Radioactive, minus the intro, so just straight to the opening riff. Then Move On, Paul singing. Finish off side 1 with Ozone. Start side 2 with What's on Your Mind with Ace singing. Do the dual power pop juggernaut, following that with Wouldn't You Like to Know Me, Paul singing. Go to New York Groove, Ace obviously. I'm in Need of Love with Gene singing, because I feel like Ace's voice doesn't quite make it on that song. I love the song, but he's not quite selling it. But I can really hear the I'm in need of love, that whole thing. Really, really going for it. Then Wiped Out, I feel like, again, Peter could handle that vocal better than Ace and make a little more sense. And then we close with Fractured Mirror, and that's 46 minutes of perfection.
Right on. All right.
Rayen.
I can't follow that.
Rayen. Rayen's frozen. All right, Ron, I guess you have to follow it.
I would
gotta
have,
follow that. It's hard.
I would have Ace play all the guitars on Paul's record and Peter sing all the lead vocals on Paul's record. No, I'm just kidding. Can't do that. I love Paul. Paul's my man. I'm trying to go from what they would have done if they hadn't done the solo records, but they had these songs in their back pocket. And I do have graphic. Of course I have a graphic. Let me see here. Of course I do. I don't know if the whole thing will show on this or not, but I'll narrate for you. I think Tonight You Belong to Me would be my opener. I didn't have anybody switching lead vocals on any songs. I don't have any Peter songs on this because there's no songs on that record that have any redeeming qualities.
Hey, man.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
Yep.
But Hooked on Rock and Roll, if you're going to go with 11 tracks, Hooked on Rock and Roll should be on there. So that's my list. Move On. You probably can't see the bottom of it. You go down to 8. maybe I can hold this up into the, because of course we have it.
Oh, there you
go. That's my list. And going off the classic KISS formula with Paul singing the first two songs, then you go to a Gene song, and I happen to really dig the intro to Radioactive, Danny, by the way. But I think it's cool. I love all the theatrical elements that Gene put onto his solo album, like Destroyer. You know, I thought that the kid singing on Great Expectations and the car keys and the radio and the Detroit Rock City.
Totally.
I just loved that. That to me was one of the things that makes that one of the greatest albums of all time. So I like those little elements that Gene inserted into his theatrical production on his solo record. And I think I've got 2 Ace songs. Just Rip It Up in New York Groove. I'm not a big fan of the Ace songs. I think the record sounds good. I listen, and I could have really taken detailed notes and critiqued all the stuff that doesn't work for me, all the stuff that sounds like, oh, they're sitting around the studio, well, shit, let's just do this. You know, it's not heartfelt, it's not thought out, it's not a whole lot of work put into that. And as a songwriter, staying up all night for months at a time, trying to make sure that every little thing, and I didn't know this back then, maybe they didn't know it back then either, but there was, you know, there's an element that you just can't settle for a couple of cheesy lines because they rhyme. You know, you've got to figure out a way to get to that next section with a hook. And it takes a lot of work, and sometimes it's magic, and sometimes it's divine intervention, and you got no control over it. But when it comes time to work a song, I felt like they just said, "Oh, that's good enough." You know, a lot of these sections, pre-choruses especially, and I don't have detailed notes to go through that with the Ace record, but man, Ace would get off to a great start on a song, and all of a sudden it's just limp dick for me, because man, you could have really driven the point home. You could have transitioned to that chorus in such a way, but that was probably Jeanette, his wife. That's probably her influence. But that's it's called KISS Unsoloed. And
nice.
I'm going to make a Spotify playlist with this and share it with our fans so they can, you know, we'll listen to this top to bottom and see how it is. But then I thought so much, it's so diluted. Our favorite band, KISS, and listening back to it now, of course, at the time I didn't feel this way because I was too busy on my own thing. I was living on the streets trying to make it in rock and roll. And, you know, I was worried about what I was doing in 78, 79. But now, to me, it feels like, man, if they had put this album together with that lineup, with those songs, it would have been among our favorite KISS albums of all time, because the songs are there. They all had something to prove. They were all on a mission, and there was a lot of magic moments. There's just not enough on any one album to make me go back and listen to it once this discussion is over.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I'll listen to this one. I'm going to make a Spotify playlist with this album, and that's my KISS Unsoloed album, and I will enjoy that on the road trips or on the airplane flights. But it feels like if you had the snare drum from this song and the bass from this song and this production and Peter's voice here and Ace's solo there, it's just all scattered. And I know that at the time they all were trying to establish their own characters and identities, and they all thought that whatever they did was probably going to be successful. We all know the economic history of those records and which one went gold and which one charted and how much they sold and how many millions of copies of those records got sent back to the factory.
Right. Well, I think that was the fun part about this exercise, though, too, is like if they would have actually done it as a band, because obviously that would change the sound of a lot of the songs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, okay, Rayen, you were frozen before. Your shot.
Oh, good. All good. Well, Ron, I agree with you. And like I said earlier, I think the solo albums were an attempt to show off each member's strengths, but it actually showed off, in my opinion, how much they all needed each other.
Absolutely.
That's just my thought. And you know, my favorite, I think right down the middle, Aces is clearly the most kind of just straight ahead rocking record, but my favorite is Gene's. My least favorite is Paul's. I don't have an exact list. I have a few thoughts. I think Burning Up off Gene's record. Imagine Paul singing that. Would that have worked?
Imagine Ron Keel singing that. I have a
Yeah,
virgin
right.
soul. Have I told you lately that I have a
Dude,
virgin?
what are you doing? Come on, Ron.
Ron, all you got to do, get yourself a case of Mick Golden Light, go into your garage and drink some beers. You know, you're going to drink some beers. You're going to open some boxes. You're going to look for that cassette tape, and then you're going to find it. You're going to play it on the radio, and that's the bottom line.
The problem with all those cassette tapes is the labels have fallen off, and you actually have to listen to them. You know, and if I digitize them from time to time. I'll find a show from Tokyo from the 80s and just cool stuff, and I'll try and digitize it in real time and preserve some of that stuff. But it's just a time-consuming process, and there's a lot of lost treasure in those boxes in my garage. Hopefully, I'm sure my kids will throw them out when I'm dead, or I'll tell them to send them all to you, Izzy.
Yeah, please.
I'll
please,
put it in my will.
Because you're
when I die, send all this shit to Izzy.
Yeah,
right.
That's my saving grace.
Because he'll outlive you.
Yeah, right.
Ron, I think I speak for a lot of us in saying that we would dig hearing that stuff. So if you ever do stumble across it, we definitely would love to hear it. My critique on Paul's record, just so I don't get off track, Wouldn't You Like to Know Me, I think should have been a Cheap Trick song. Am I wrong on that?
Ooh.
Yeah, it could be.
It just I love it. It just felt so Cheap Trick and Take Me Away. It sounded like Paul trying to be Led Zeppelin but missing the mark. I just think there's so much brilliance in each record that it's hard to take out, because what I was saying to Ron earlier, there's some moments like Ron was saying, it just feels like the record label came in and was like, well, we got Snowblind, Rip It Out, New York Groove, just producer, don't even worry about the rest of it being in tune, just get us 6 more tracks. And some of the stuff, not everything. My favorite is Gene's record by far, just because it's quirky. I think he took the biggest chance out of all of them by doing kind of the show tuney record. In the Peter record, I go back to saying, I think vocally, I think he tonally, just listening to him sing, I enjoyed it the most. And I think Can't Stop the Rain would have been a great Paul Stanley. I think Paul Stanley needed Can't Stop the Rain for his solo record. Ooh. That would have been his best song, in my opinion. And that's the bottom line, Izzy. That's the bottom line.
And look, Rayen, because I saw that picture of your Ric Flair big gold belt. I had to pull out the Winged Eagle for you, buddy. Hal.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
This is also another reason I don't get to have sex, because I have a World Wrestling Federation championship belt in my possession.
I not to be outdone by Ron Keel, I also have graphics. It's a post-it note on here, but it's unfortunately in the same shade as my green screen a little bit. So if I move it too close, it just vanishes like a like a shit magic trick. My perfect list. Unlike some of the heathens around us, desperately, madly love the Paul Stanley record and find the simplicity of some of the Ace stuff not an evidence of stuff that's missing, but of evidence of fullness, in that there's a complete confidence in some of the simplicity of things like Ozone specifically and Snowblind. There's sometimes, filling up the space with a lot of tonnage is a way of like showing off all the stuff that you've got going on in your songwriting prowess. And sometimes it's a way of fearing the simplicity of what you're doing. And Ace's rawness was really what drew everybody in and felt the toughest. And Ozone and which, by the way, would never be on my group KISS record, because Paul and Gene would have said no to that and Snowblind because of the drug references. So even though I like them, they would not be on the Magic KISS non-solo record. So that's why they're not included. That said, the album, if it was real and it was a genuine KISS record, would play out like all KISS records, which is, with the exception of, it would have 2 Ace songs instead of 1. It's the only difference in this situation. For me, it starts with It's All Right, beginning of the second side of Paul's record, but a good kickoff tune. Goes to Radioactive, Gene follow-up, then Ain't Quite Right, then Rip It Out, and then Peter co-singing "See You in My Dreams." That's the way you would work him in.
Wow.
You'd have him split the chorus, the high part that Gene sings in a lot of ways, like they did with Young and Wasted Live when Eric Carr used to sing it, which I can't tell you how much I loved watching that version of that song when he would sing it live. Wouldn't You Like to Know Me? New York Groove would be the second Ace song, and the only reason KISS would allow it is because it's a cover. So it's an Ace song, but it isn't. But it would also be a hit, and they would get it in there. Love in Chains, exactly where it is on the Paul record, and Goodbye as a round out. And the whole record would be summed up into the solo era, in and out. It's all right, we do these songs, goodbye. And and those, and in many ways, the way kind of, some people would seed out of the Ace record, which I respect. I would seed it out of the Paul record as a KISS album, anyways, as a fusion record. And there are songs like Love in Chains, particularly, Move On, like I said before, and Goodbye, which I've always held in emotional high esteem. But even in talking about those, even voicing that, sometimes you find you're like, oh, but what about, oh, but this, but I also love, oh, but this, and so Wouldn't You Like to Know Me? And
I love that song.
Yeah, it's such an amazing song. And I get, Ron, where you're talking about the Tonight You Belong to Me opening lyric part of Tonight You Belong to Me, like that pitch version. And maybe these days he would do it differently or do it as a harmony vocal with something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
maybe that would be the way.
There are always options. I guess he chose the falsetto. That's one option. But
right.
I think back then, I think Paul could have probably sang that full voice.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's the interesting thing is I think, everybody talks about Paul's throat damage, and that's been a big story over him using tape and blah, blah, blah. And like, once you're up in those zones, if pop singers who are in their 20s are wearing, are doing vocal tracks or whatever, like, please, the dude who tours nonstop for 40 years can use backing vocals on choruses. Give me a break. Like, it doesn't bother me at all. And as a matter of fact, this break, because of COVID, may give him the healing break he's needed, because that more than anything is what he needs, is vocal rest. Because even at home, he's sounding better when he's doing these little singing from home things. I'm like, oh, there it is. There's his voice, because he hasn't been singing every day. Yeah, he's doing these little like sessions from his house. It's great. But in the 80s, he really found his voice. And then I think what really fucked up his voice was going back and doing the old songs from the early years when he wasn't as good a singer, and he had a bad technique, and he goes back to singing in the same range he was singing in before, which is different than his tone. It's like singing AC/DC half a step down. You can't do it without sawing through your vocal cords. You have to do them in the original tuning or you will die. Same thing with Cinderella. You can't sing the Tom Keeper voice, the Jim Road. Like, you can't do that half a step down or you'll kill yourself. You'll lose your voice. And if you try to do that, which a lot of bands do, drop it down half a step when you're live, it seems like it's helping, but it's actually hurting you long term. And I think that's what happened during the reunion tour, and it did some damage. And he just is a way better singer in these later years than he was in the 70s. He learned in the studio live. They might as well have been a punk band on those first two records, as far as the vocals go.
I mean, you listen to those vocals on KISS Unplugged, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, right. And listen to fucking Crazy Nights, for God's sake.
God, yeah.
And Forever, Jesus Christ. Like, he wrote that with Michael Bolton, and Michael Bolton can't hit those notes. You know what I mean? Like, Jesus. And apparently, is it true? Ron, you'll know this. Ron will know this. Apparently, in the Forever video, when Gene leans over and hits him and they laugh about something, Gene says, "I farted."
I have no idea. I'll have to.
He farted when they were doing Forever. Yeah, he farted, and then he leans over and tells Paul right before the take, "I farted." Like that.
Wow. That is
like,
hilarious.
You asshole.
Classic trivia.
Yeah, right.
All right, you guys ready?
So that's my thing. Yeah.
You guys ready for mine?
Go for it.
All right. I titled mine "Living in Sin," and ironically, this afternoon I took "Living in Sin" off of it. This is weird. So, when
Are you canceling Holiday Inn? Is that why? Is it did Holiday Inn post something bad on their Twitter feed?
Yeah,
and so you had to remove it?
That's exactly what. Actually, it's funny because as a kindergartner, I took Gene's solo record to Show and Tell because it was 78. And the song that I played was Living in Sin. I didn't know. I didn't know.
The teacher knew.
Yeah,
it's the 70s.
I know.
So why did you take that one off to make room? What song did you put in its place, Izzy?
Let's see, because I originally had 12 songs and I wanted to get it down to 11 so it could fit on a record. I think we'll get there when we get there. Okay, so opening track would be Rip It Out. Into Speeding Back to My Baby and Epstein, good call with Peter singing. I've been saying that all along. Track 3, Burning Up with Fever. Then I go into Move On and close out side 1 with Wouldn't You Like to Know Me? And then we go into Radioactive with the intro, then Paul Stanley's It's All Right. And then the Peter Criss song, Rock Me Baby. Ace Frehley, Snowblind, even though as the esteemed Mr. Sparks had said, it never would have ended up on the record because it's about drugs, but I think it's so hidden well. You know, that it might have gotten past. No, I was driving through a snowstorm. That's how I wrote it, you know.
I can't see it.
And then Paul Stanley's Tonight You Belong to Me, and closing out with the New York Groove. And I think what I did is I pulled out. I think I pulled out Living in Sin to put in It's All Right.
I think they both have to be there. But track 1, you have Rip It Out. Track 1, who sings that? Ace is singing the first track on a KISS
absolutely.
record?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right.
Absolutely. It's just because that song is that to me, that's probably the best song on all 4 of the records.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
It's solid.
Izzy, let me ask you this: you play all the Ace stuff.
Yeah.
Do you hear Ballroom Blitz from Sweet in Wiped Out?
I don't know. I've never played it.
Oh, I thought you covered all those records.
Well, we don't do that one.
But that was my least favorite song on the Ace record. But
I'm not a huge fan of it.
I totally agree.
I'm not a huge fan.
I could hear that though, man. I could totally. I mean, it's obvious that Ace was paying attention to a lot of that. I mean, New York Groove. That was Hello. That was another English glam band from the mid 70s, contemporaries of the Sweet. So
written by somebody else.
Russ Ballard.
Yes, Russ Ballard. Who also
Daniel, can I ask you something just to get your feedback? Because in your profile that I got, it said that you're a pop culture guy. I argue with Star Wars fans a lot that KISS actually started the whole cosplay nerd culture, and Star Wars just came in and perfected it. I think KISS built the first wheel on that wagon. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, because kids were already showing up to KISS concerts in the makeup before Star Wars even came out.
There you go. Thank you, man. Thank you. People argue with me till the death, and I'm like, KISS started that
I agree.
whole culture.
I think that's absolutely true.
We were going to Alice Cooper concerts with the Alice Cooper makeup before KISS came along.
Bingo.
Oh,
okay. Well, let me ask you this, because this has been a conversation point about the back cover of KISS Alive with the guys holding the sign. There is nobody in that crowd wearing KISS makeup. And the point is that maybe it wasn't actually at a KISS show. The rumor and innuendo is that it might have been at a God, I can't remember which band they said, but it wasn't at a KISS show because there is nobody in that crowd wearing KISS shirts or KISS makeup.
Well,
it was relatively early though.
Yeah, I mean, I think the T-shirt thing might not have been as prominent.
It wasn't a big a game, back then. Right.
But if you look on the back cover of KISS Alive, there's a grassy knoll over there. There's one guy. It's one lone guy with KISS makeup on.
Yeah, but the shadow across his face is in the wrong direction. And I don't know if you know this, but the sun rises in the east. And maybe
everything we know about KISS, tell me anybody in this room would be surprised if somebody said, hey, go in there with a sign and take a picture of the packed house at Cubbo Hall, and we're going to use it for the cover. They totally would have done that.
Totally.
No problem.
But you know,
I've never heard that.
I grew up in Michigan, 30 minutes outside of Detroit, and, prime KISS country. And I don't remember anybody wearing KISS makeup until after Alive 1 came out.
Uh-huh. Yep. That was the whole point. That was the launch, because you go see them live, and nobody thought to do the dress up until they were a genuine hit. They were, it was kind of like, tons of bands would just make their bones live touring and do, friggin' 5 albums worth of material, and they were just playing it live with nothing to show for it, really. Yeah. During that era, because making a record wasn't as easy. Neither was taking a picture, for that matter. Like, how like we live with phones and everything. The idea of setting up a photo that was quality enough to use on an album cover in and of itself. I mean, look at the Alive 1 cover. It wasn't a live shot, and they spent a lot of time bent in really strange positions trying to get a shot that looked real. It was a whole different time. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants just for all the shit they did, just trying to make rock and roll happen.
Right. Closing thoughts.
Gene told me only
please.
steal from the best. So that's my KISS, that's my Ron Keel Alive 1 shot. Right
I love it.
That's an actual live concert shot, guys. Trust me.
Nice.
That is killer. That is.
I believe it.
Way back in the day, back home, we were working with this young band, and I wanted to get their promo shot, so I took them to like the stairs of this church, and I tried to put these kids into the destroyer poses. It didn't turn out as well as I was hoping, but that was exactly what I was going for, because they had no fucking idea what I was talking about. But just like this, get your leg up, like you're doing a crunch, Closing thoughts, Rayen, you want to give your info for the record and the single and all that stuff?
You talking about plug my stuff?
Yes.
Right now, I've been working a new record. It's a reimagined version of the Warrant classic Cherry Pie. It's a country version called Apple Pie. If you look up Early Ray, EARLYRAY.com, or either Early Ray on YouTube, you can watch the video. We got Bobby to come back. We shot part of it at the Rainbow, and we shot part of it in the woods of Carolina.
Nice.
And I have my buddy Stevie Rochelle's helping me work the record, which has made the intro to you. And earlyray.com. And my closing thoughts on the records is that not one record stands out completely as just dominating. I think Gene's is my favorite, but I think the records, like I said, were meant to try to show off everybody's strengths, but to me, it showed how much they each needed each other. That's my thought.
That's well thought out.
Awesome.
Epstein, you got anything? You have anything to pimp? You have anything coming out?
I got plenty coming out, man. I got 2, not 1, but 2 books on guitar pedals coming out November 15th.
Oh, nice.
Stompbox, 100 pedals of 100 great guitarists, and Stompbox Vintage and Rarities, 333 cool, unusual, and crazy pedals. That's coming out in November. In the spring, I've got a book I'm working on with former Yankees star Ron Bloomberg about his friendship with Thurman Munson.
Oh, cool.
It's called The Captain and Me, and it has absolutely nothing to do with KISS, but we do talk a lot about 70s soul music, which I know Paul Stanley's a big fan of. So,
yes.
So that's going to be out next spring. And the last thing I'll say is I'm also a huge 70s punk rock fan, and I feel like Ace's solo record is like the closest thing to a Ramones record that anybody from 70s hard rock arena got. And to me, that's a beautiful thing.
I agree with that.
Mr. Keel.
Well, I think that this has been a fascinating and entertaining discussion for me. As we know, KISS continues to cultivate new and young fans. A lot of them don't remember these albums when they came out. Maybe some of these listeners and fans and viewers of yours, Izzy, will go back and check out those records now and get something out of it. And we've managed to at least resurrect that moment in time during this discussion.
Right.
I really enjoyed listening to the records, and I would have never probably done that. I'm in a writing phase right now, working on my new album, and so when I'm doing that, I don't listen to anything else except what's on my radio show, because my next album is probably going to come out sounding like a mashup of all 4 of these KISS solo albums.
Yeah!
But
Dude,
I do have
put Burning Up with Fever on it.
Yeah, we can cut that in a heartbeat, man. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Don't tempt me, and I would love to do that. And that's a good thought, because the song does have potential. And I do have a new album out called South by South Dakota, which is epic. I'm really proud of this new record, and you can find it and all my other stuff, my radio show, all the videos, the social media, all that at ronkeel.com.
Beautiful. Mr. Sparks.
Yeah. Well, I would, to sort of bring it back home to how we kind of started off this discussion in many ways, I'd like to give a big shout out to Araldo Caragatti. If you don't know who he is, he's the dude who painted the 4 covers. He's the artist who did that. He also did the Rush Fly By Night Owl.
Nice.
That kind of like cover of heavy metal magazine style, that we all fell in love with, and that Man of War monkeyed around with poorly. But I'd also like to say for the record that I've had a mad crush on each one of the women in this picture, in the sides over, on either side of me.
It's the same woman, right?
I don't think so. I think there's like 4 or 5 different models that did the posing.
Well, I heard I heard one of these. Correct me. Some KISS fan will correct me. The photographer just had his wife pose in different directions as he painted her in those ways. But I agree with you. I thought they were hot as well when I got the record.
Well, if that turns out to be the case, she's attractive from every angle. That and that said, I would say that, and remind everybody that, like, we went through and we picked songs we liked, and we had our criticisms of stuff, and we had our praises of things, and even I do not care for the Peter Criss record at all. It just doesn't do anything for me. But it's not about me. It's about Manny. It's about Daniel's friend at camp who has no idea who KISS is, and just will be standing Peter Criss's green face and hair for eternity. And the only regret I have about the solo records in this regard is that they didn't happen a year and a half later, after they broomed Peter to keep Ace in the band, and had Eric Carr do a record of his own, because rest his soul, we just passed the anniversary of his passing. Yeah, his birthday was recently, and then he died on the same day that Freddie Mercury died, and everybody conveniently forgot about it. And we were all kind of reminiscing about the fact that, during the God Gave Rock and Roll to You video, he was already dying and knew it, and wanted to play on that anyways. He had a wig on because his hair had all fallen out from chemo, and just a good soul, and as we think back on the history of this band and the people and the stuff that they've gone through, and the failures and the rising and the falling and all this stuff, few things will stack up to that happening to a friend of yours who's in the band. And
Al,
I
I
love
didn't mean
him.
to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
I gotta ask you a question on that point. But besides Ron Keel watching KISS Meets the Phantom with Gene, which I think is pretty fucking awesome, you made a great point in bringing up. These are the takeaways that a nerd like me takes away from these things. But I have to ask you, since you're an Eric Carr fan such as I am, if you had to pick one song to trade Peter for Ace and hear what it would sound like in the original catalog, or not Peter for Ace, Eric for Peter, which one would you pick?
Oh, as a drummer, I'd put him on all the first records.
Every
because
one.
I know every one. I mean, I like Peter's voice, and they're like, but when they would do the songs that Peter sang live, Eric brought all that and an energy to it that just was monstrous. Like the way he hit the drums versus the light tapping, that and that was always something they fought in the mixing process. It was always a nice skate uphill. It's not like a version of Beth or something like it couldn't have happened with Eric Carr over time, had that come up, had he been inspired to write that. But that's not the make or break song for me anyways. Strange Ways with Ace playing guitar and Eric Carr singing would have been an amazing thing to see in my lifetime.
Oh, yeah,
Because I love Strange Ways, and I love and I think Strange Ways is more indicative of the album that Ace put out than any other song, including Shock Me and stuff that he put out.
Oh yeah.
So but that said, I just want to, in the mix of our solo record stuff, when they were trying to keep it together, they were forcing it, and we all try sometimes. Sometimes you got to let go, and when you let go, what showed up in the case of Peter leaving first was an amazing human being who gave new life to the band and a ferocity in the songwriting process. I mean, it brought back the heavy. I mean, Creatures of the Night, just his playing on that alone redefined what they could be, and he was still able to play the pop stuff.
Yeah.
So I love Eric Carr, and I appreciate him, a lot. And I would like to honorable mention of Eric in this process.
Right. My only problem with that synopsis is, though, that Peter's playing was part of that original magic, because Eric he was a Bonham guy. He was a Zeppelin guy. He was the hard bashing boom, boom guy. Peter had that swing that brought a flavor to that music that kind of made it shine above everything else that you heard. By
the time they got to solidifying who they were, which was in Alive and Destroyer, it was getting into that heavier stuff. It was locking into that part of it. And I, the God of Thunder drumming and all that kind of stuff with the reversal, the playing the drums backwards and all that stuff was much more indicative of where they would find Eric Carr being the perfect guy for it than Peter. If anything, they were fighting that for a long time, so that's the thing, they're like fighting for that thing, trying to keep it together sometimes isn't always the best thing, Mom and Dad. So that's just my last, kind of thought on it is I'm such a fan of his and his playing and his transformation of the band and his support of that angle on the band. And I love Asylum. I love Lick It Up. I love Creatures of the Night. I loved his playing on Crazy Nights. I loved his playing on, like all that stuff. It was just, he was a great era, and I would have loved to hear his thunder on those things, on those tracks.
Well, Hal, to your credit, Hal, I think a lot of people forget just how much Eric Carr really saved the sound of that band. And to answer my own question, in my mind, I always think how badass would Rock and Roll Over been with Eric Carr on it. I agree.
Right.
In the first
That's what I'm talking about.
The first few records, the swing, to me, Peter kind of had the same style in a way as Steven Adler. He had a swing to it. When you hear Guns N' Roses, when they bring Steven out for a few songs, you're like, that sounds like
it's a different band. It's great.
Yep. Yeah, but Eric was such a force, and I really appreciate you bringing him up. And I would have loved to have heard an Eric solo record as well. So, kudos to you, buddy. Kudos to you. That's a great one.
Hal, people want to find you. You got your Van Halen. Is it a parody or is it a tribute?
No, we do Nerd Halen. We all the songs sound like the records. We don't mess around.
Okay.
You never in your covered situation. You don't mess around with the sound of the songs when you're a tribute. Right. I think if you're direct on tribute. I mean, it's different if you're reinterpreting stuff. But we joke around between songs, but then the joke is we sound exactly like them. So Nerd Halen is we just did a version of Where Have All the Good Times Gone that we're going to put out in kind of COVID related music news. And then I've been perpetually working on my band's second record forever, but it's getting closer because I've actually had time to sit down and hunker down and write this. I mean, I am Hal Sparks. I mean, look me up. There is no other. It's like there's no. Oh, I mixed him up with. No. It doesn't work that way. Hi, how you doing? So follow me on all the social medias that you care to be refollowed and stalked on, and enjoy all the entertainment I provide, both free and for money.
That's what it's all about. A couple more shots from the chat room. Scotty says from Canada would love to spend a day in that garage and go through those tapes with Ron Keel.
Come on, I need all the help I can get.
Yep, he'll have a case of Mick Golden Light waiting for you. How is that Mick Golden Light, by the way?
Over there. Dude, it's absolutely fantastic. I thank you for recommending it. My first ever. It was my first. Now we're going to have my second. I can't believe I got through this whole discussion with one beer and half a bottle of Keel.
There you go.
Thanks so much for the suggestion. Izzy Presley, this Mick is for you.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. Tall Bear, check.
You're Irish?
What?
You're Irish?
Me?
Kidding.
What? No,
I'm
never
just mind.
Drunk.
No.
Tall Bear says Tall Bear gives his list. He says Snowblind, Move On, Rip It Out, Radioactive, Can't Stop the Rain, Ozone, Man of a Thousand Faces, Love and Chains, and Tonight You Belong to Me. And then he goes, It's All Right, and New York Groove. All right, so there you go. You guys just want to hold on for a second. I'm going to hit the outro. I want to say goodbye to you guys off the air. Thank you guys again. Rayen Belchere, Dan Epstein, Ron Keel, the heavy metal cowboy, and the incomparable Hal Sparks. Thank you guys. I'm going to hit my Black Diamond outro music. We'll be back on Thursday night. I've got Paul Gargano from Metal Edge Magazine coming on a special one-on-one. We have a lot of thoughts and a lot of stuff to go over. It's going to be a fun conversation. Going to get his story on top of it next week. You know what? I've been thinking about this. I think I'm going to do Ozzy next week for the Drunken Summit. That's an executive decision right now. Doing do the little Ozzy Osbourne next week. You know, maybe we do a little salsa,
These filmmakers just boobs. All right.
What boobs? Somebody say boobs. Oh my God. Hit up all the social media at Real Izzy Presley all the way across the board. Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And of course, the show page is another podcast. Donate to the show, izzypresley at yahoo.com via PayPal. And of course, buy t-shirts on the Teespring page. And subscribe on YouTube. Don't forget, my name is Izzy Presley. This has been a blast talking the solo records. And don't forget, what I lack in talent, I make up for in cock.